to the Pigskin Party Podcast. It's time for the flavor of the week. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Make sure to like the video and leave your comments below. If you were listening to the NFL episode, you're the trooper. Really appreciate you sticking around. And a quick reminder, if you didn't hear the NFL episode, we have changed the format. So this is typically, you're hearing this on Friday if you're listening right away. This is typically where we drop the politics. We have changed the name permanently from the Pigskins and Politics Podcast to the Pigskin Party Podcast. So it's still the good old PPP, but we've changed it and we've changed the format. So rather than only talking about politics on our bonus episode every week that drops on Friday, we'll still do some politics, but we'll also do some football like we did last week. We'll also do some pop culture. We'll talk about whatever. So let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Will Southard, straight from Huntsville, Alabama, in a creepy, murdery-looking hotel room. Coming back for the second episode of the week. Will, I know you're on cloud nine after just talking about your beloved Brady, but how you feeling right now, dude?
I want you to point out that if you just listen to the previous episode of this podcast, and Jeff can attest to this because he was there, because it happened like literally 5 minutes ago. Spoiler alert. It's that we didn't talk about Tom Brady like the entire time. I don't know how I just realized now that Brian weaseled an hour out of my life without talking about Tom Brady. And I'm kind of mad, honestly, that I just realized it.
That's called podcast hosting skills, son.
No, you interrupted me. Listen.
Well, perhaps, yeah.
No, it's been good, man.
How about this? I'll give you one quick 30 seconds. Go ahead and do your Brady praise, since you know what, you're right. We didn't allow you to do that on the previous episode.
Tom Brady operates on Tom Brady's own time. Whenever Tom Brady damn well pleases. So he'll come in when he's good and ready. You're not going to do that. I'm in a hotel room with art. Like look, some of this art, bro. That is a leaf with veins. I noticed that like with the reflection, it kind of looked like balls, but I promise you, that's a leaf.
And for those that are listening on the podcast, you have no idea what Will just said, because I don't have any idea what he just said.
It's a veiny leaf that's art in a hotel room. But I'm doing good, man.
As usual, Will is making our producer Anthony's job so much more difficult than it needs to be. But I'm glad you're feeling good, Will. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest again, coming in from the NFL episode, Jeff Chesser, joining us again for the bonus episode. Are you ready to keep going and have some fun here?
Despite Will laughing at my name, yes, I absolutely am ready to keep going.
Yeah, I think he's still a little traumatized by the comment on.
I think delighted is.
There you go. True. Fair enough. Will definitely has the serial killer vibe going in with the weird red hoodie and the mask wearing at one point, and all by himself in his hotel room. Anyway,
good day.
One thing we are gonna keep, because we love doing it, but also our listeners, our fans have really enjoyed it, is just because we're changing the format does not mean we're getting rid of the palate cleanser. Even though we're not going from football to politics, we are still going from football to some different topic. And we do not expect you to go from football to the flavor of the week without a little bit of a palate cleanser first. So this episode is no different. For this week's palate cleanser, I know that this is specifically for Jeff. So Jeff, as we mentioned previously, is the co-host of The Year We Started a Podcast, and he is a huge, might I say, space nerd, which is not a bad thing, because I consider myself the same. So we're going to talk about NASA. So the NASA Perseverance rover is set to land on Mars. That's right, the planet Mars, on February 18th. So we're going to land a rover on Mars. So that is going to be our palate cleanser. And Jeff, I'm going to start with you, because this is a particular passion of yours. Tell us all about what the deal is with the NASA rover.
Yeah, so, and I'm fighting the urge to derail your podcast and talk about sparkling water for a second, but that's a thing that we have in common.
Feel free. You and I can defend our sparkling water.
So before we started recording this episode, Will expressed in very good analogy his distaste for sparkling water, or flavored sparkling water. So we'll maybe exclude him from this conversation real quick. But Brian, I want to know, what's your recommendation for sparkling water?
So we had been doing LaCroix, whatever you want to say, but we recently LaCroix. I took French in high school.
I'm from Kansas, so.
Yeah, true. LaCroix. But recently we discovered that the Costco brand, you can get like 32 cans for like $8.99, and it may not be as good, but damn, is it a good value? So that's really what we've been drinking lately. But if I had to choose, Aha's pretty good. Bubbly, certain flavor like the blackberry.
See,
is
I'm not a fan of bubbly. You got to try Spindrift. That's basically why I want to
Okay. Well, wait a minute.
I think I've seen it.
Wait a minute. There are people that enjoy the NFL that watch this show. I guarantee you, not one person in the stadium in Tampa was drinking a frickin' LaCroix. I got news for you. And you talking about going to Costco to get a metric.
There were a lot of healthcare. There were a lot of frontline workers there. They might have been craving that good old sparkling water.
Just because you can get 4,000 ash-flavored bubbly waters from Costco for like $3 does not mean that nobody wants to talk about that shit on the podcast.
Hey, listen, it gets me my H2O, and it gives me a hint of flavor. I mean, what is not to like? I'll say specifically, Jeff, bubbly, it's not the bubbly as a whole. It's specifically, I think it's the blackberry flavor. One of those flavors in particular is really good. Okay. Bubbly as a whole, no, that's not my go-to
I tried the
choice.
Orange one, and it's like cough syrup. So, yeah, not my favorite.
Yeah, that's not
all
good.
Right, well, I feel like
Aha is my recommendation to you. Aha is actually pretty good. I don't know if they have it in Kansas.
I have not tried that before.
And I'll look out for Spindrift, and Will can drink whatever crazy stuff Will drinks in his murderous hotel room.
So NASA. Like when you go and you like take a poop, and you know you pooped, but like you look in the toilet and there's no poop, but there should be poop there. That's how it is with flavored water. Like there's no flavor. Like you know that it should be there, and you're kind of looking for it, but it's not there. That's what.
So I can honestly say that I don't understand the analogy in the slightest. When have you pooped that felt like you pooped but you didn't see poop? What is going?
You've never taken a ghost poop, bro? You don't know what that is?
Like, Tom Brady fans are really weird.
Is Lamar Jackson familiar with this term? Did he take a ghost
that was
poop
a very real poop
against the Browns? That was a very real poop in the fourth quarter of the game against Cleveland.
No.
Ghost poop. I have learned a new word. Thank you, Will. You actually taught me something. Ghost poop. So, Mars.
Yeah.
NASA. Rovers. You know what? Maybe when there's a colony on Mars, I bet you they'll have sparkling water there. Jeff, take it away.
Yeah, so I've grown up really loving space my entire life. Aside from football, it's probably my second love. I've really, really enjoyed it. Man, it is really hard to stay focused looking at Will laughing at me all the time.
Are you going to volunteer for
it's an art.
That's still a thing? It can be the first space cadet.
All right, we digress. So no, I've followed all of things space my entire life. I've really enjoyed it a lot. And when my kids were, it's like right after my daughter had just been born. My kids are coming up on 2 and 4.5, and I, as a person who likes space, I wanted to do something cool for them. Just kind of, I don't know, just things aligned. That I realized that it was an opportunity, and I went and did it. And what I did was I had my daughter and son's names engraved on what you can send up to on the Perseverance rover to Mars. And I did that. I didn't do my own. I kind of regret that. Now I'm kind of jealous of my kids. But yeah, their names are going to be on Mars, and that's super cool. Well, I did that well before like my son, who's the older one, that's 4.5, even knew any of that, like what any of that even meant, because they opened that up pretty early on. But now that he's older, he also, with a little bit of influence from his dad, has gotten into space stuff, and he watched the Perseverance launch back in July, and like he was so excited that his name was going to go on to another planet, even though he didn't 100% know exactly what that meant. And he was very, very disappointed at the launch that it did not then land. Apparently, the fact that Mars is 300 million miles away or whatever
couldn't grasp the 4-year-old brain.
Why we only watched the launch part and not the landing part. Which the landing part's super crazy. I mean, it's basically like they're going to be it's a sky crane type scenario because they can't land it directly onto the planet. They have to lower it down because the boosters would kick up way too much dust, which is just the most wild thing that you can send something on a whatever it is, 7-month journey, 8-month, 9-month journey, and have it all ready to go because it's like 9 minutes for the signal to get back to us. So there's no at home adjusting that's going to happen. Like that thing is either going to crash into the surface of Mars or it's going to sky crane itself and drop the little relatively speaking, rover, very big actually, onto the surface and launch itself and crash out on the surface. So it's something I've really, really looked forward to. It's going to happen on next Thursday around, I think, noon your time, Brian, Pacific time.
Like 12:50 Pacific time.
Yeah, and so I've had marked off on my calendar for a good minute at work where I'm off that afternoon. I'm gonna go watch it and
take a half day.
Yeah, exactly. I joke that I'm gonna cry when that thing lands, but there's a good chance that just like when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, there's a good chance that I cry when that thing lands. This is just a super cool thing and a huge feat of science to. It just baffles my mind to even think something like that's even possible.
And you know what? Because your Chiefs lost, I hope even more that this thing doesn't blow up, because that would be two losses.
You'll have to bring me back on just to
actually,
I'll be a man defeated.
You won't believe this from anything that this will not correlate with what you think about me. But without naming specific.
By the way, real quick, that is Will to a T. Does not correlate. For those, I know him better than.
I actually, Jeff will find this interesting because I know he doesn't know this about me. But I've actually done quite a lot of work for NASA. And one of our
kidding.
Yeah, so
no kidding.
If you remember the Taurus 2 rocket, I actually built a lot of the high pressure test cart, designed and built a lot of the high pressure test carts that they use at Wallops Island in Virginia. I got to sign the payload for the Taurus 2 rocket, did a lot of work on that project, and now my new job, we support the Space Coast, SpaceX. I can't really talk about specifics, obviously, but from all my
without
work,
killing us,
NASA Goddard up near Maryland. It is a miracle anything goes anywhere, and it's kind of the future of NASA is going to be more acting as like a design firm and kind of like subcontracting a lot to companies like SpaceX, just for like the future of that program. I think it's going to look pretty different. They're not going to kind of take the lead and be the whole shebang when it comes to a lot of these things. Space exploration will be largely done in the future by people like Elon Musk and companies like that, that have access to a lot more stuff. But yeah, you would not think that about me, that I do those kind of things, but I do custom basically like engineering consulting, and we were able to design and build that stuff.
Yeah, Will's actually very smart, but this part of his brain that deals with maturity never went past like age 8. So.
Listen, I think about smart things from 8 to 5 every day, or more honestly, 9 to 3:30. And after that, it's just dick jokes. After that, that's all it is. That's all I got time for.
And Tom Brady fandom. So this seems very likely then, because you live in Florida now, right? Is that correct?
Orlando, yep.
So have you seen a launch in person?
The ones at Wallops. The ones at Wallops, not the ones down here at Kennedy or anything like that yet.
But you've witnessed one in person then.
Yeah.
That's man. That aside what you just described is super cool, and I'm a little bit awestruck. I love this so much that I don't know anybody in my personal life that is involved in space programs at all or to any degree.
There's a lot of people like you that really love space.
Do you know anyone who's worked with nuclear reactors?
I did.
Well, you do now.
I did that too. Yeah.
But no, that is a huge bucket list item for me, is to see a launch in person, which may seem easy for most people that live on a coast city, or I guess on the East Coast. But in Kansas, there are not a lot of rockets being launched out of Kansas.
Yeah, but you have all the UFOs.
I have to catch it when I'm out of town.
You have all the cornfield designs.
The cornfields.
The
crop circles.
I'm surprised your kids haven't been yanked up by a tractor beam yet from the ship.
Who says they haven't? They return them, right? They don't keep them permanently. Here's my NASA connection. So I've always been fascinated by space. Obviously, I'm a Star Wars nerd. It's been mentioned dozens of times on this very show. But I also have just been fascinated with space exploration in general. My son, luckily, has inherited that. We watched both of the seasons of Cosmos, not the Carl Sagan one, but the Neil deGrasse Tyson. He loves it. Oh, can we? He got to be in bed by 9, but can we watch Cosmos? We got him a telescope, a very expensive telescope for Christmas that I need to triangulate. I tried to the first time, it didn't work, so I got to triangulate that thing. He reads like space books. But the most exciting thing about this is when we moved to California, we found a military base that rented to a certain percentage of civilians. But this military base, which is where we live, is also a NASA research facility. So I live at a NASA research facility, and there are NASA employees who live in our neighborhood, one of which we've made friends with. She is the director of operations for a moon rover that's going to be launched in 2023. And her goal is to work on the Mars rover after that. So, and there's literally, Jeff, I'll send you a picture. When you enter our neighborhood, there's a giant replica space shuttle, like right at the front, like right after, because guard gate, because it's a military base, so you got to get past the guards. But then there's a giant space shuttle replica. It's just an awesome way to come home. So
Yeah.
we will also closely be watching the Mars rover landing. My son has school, but I might just be like, you know what? Skip your Zoom call. Let's watch this
You
thing.
seem a
land.
little sick today. I'm a little under the weather today.
Yeah,
Exactly.
do you know what Brian's son also inherited from Brian? It's
Red
adult
hair?
adult eyebrows.
This blonde hair. This
Blonde hair,
blonde.
whatever.
Adult eyebrows since like birth. The kid has the most intense
Yes.
eyebrows
My son,
entire life.
he has had full eyebrows since he was a newborn infant.
Dude,
So
There's like
hey,
they're like
they
mini
make me look
mustaches
distinguished.
that just exist over his eyeballs. They're amazing.
Impressive.
Studly looking kid.
Yeah,
I mean that. He's a
8-year-old
good-looking kid.
maturity. He is a good-looking kid. I have a very attractive wife, which I think contributes to it exactly. So I'm feeling very space-aged cleansed. What about you guys? You feeling cleansed?
Feeling good.
Little NASA, because I'm ready to get to the main topic. I'm actually very excited about this topic. This will be the first topic officially that's not football or politics, because in every episode until last week had been politics, and last week we did a bonus NFL episode with the Deshaun Watson stuff. And what we are talking about today is, drum roll, drums. So here's the reason. I'll explain first. So how I met Mr. Willie Southard, the serial killer looking guy, if you're watching from YouTube, my co-host, is we started a band together back when he was an even more annoying 18-year-old. I met him in a grocery store. We worked at a grocery store called Publix. So if we have any listeners from the Southeast, Florida especially, if you ever go to a Publix grocery store, I was a cashier. He was a bag boy. And he just kept annoying me, talking about metal music and all this. But that caught my attention because I wanted to be in a band. I didn't play anything, but I wanted to be in a band. And I wanted to be a singer. I just knew I wanted to perform. I had discovered since my 19 years old that I wanted to perform music for a career, but I didn't play any instruments. And Will was a drummer. So we got together and we tried to make music happen, and it just didn't work for whatever reason. And I ended up moving moving to South Florida.
That's the reason.
Well, I would say that. That's part of it. I don't have an awful voice, but not a lead singer voice. I can perform stage-wise, but I can't sing. Not to that degree.
You're barely functional.
Whatever. I move away down to South Florida, and we stayed in touch. And he had started working on his own music. He also plays guitar, so he had written a number of songs. I don't know if you remember this story, Will, exactly. So you came down to visit. Your grandmother lived in South Florida, so you would come down there, and we'd hang out every time you came down. And you played a CD for me. Oh, no, sorry. I'll back up. So you were playing guitar. I went to visit my now wife, still lived in Gainesville at the time, and I met up with you, and you said, hey, I've written some riffs. Why don't you get on the drums and just put down a beat? I didn't know how to play drums. You're like, I don't care. Just put a beat down. And I just sat down at the drums, and I don't know how to describe it. It just made sense. I had so much fun, but I forgot about it. And then fast forward a month, you came down to visit your grandmother. We hung out. We were in your car. You popped the CD, and he's like, dude, listen to this. And it was us. It was just you on guitar and me on drums. But I heard myself playing drums, and I was like, holy crap, I can play drums. Like, it didn't occur to me when we were playing, but listening back. So from there, we started a band. It started a 10-year journey for me. This is going to be news to listeners. A 10-year journey for me in a pursuit of a career in music, and I was in a number of bands, ended up moving to New York City, was in a very successful band there, but that is our drum connection. So when Jeff, who I've been talking to, and I listen to his podcast, as I mentioned that he is not only a drummer, but also met his wife in drumline in, I believe it was high school, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm like, this has to be the main topic. So as usual, I'm going to start with our guest, Jeff. Tell us your drumming history.
Before you tell Before you tell that, Brian's musical journey was a lot like that Mark Wahlberg movie Rockstar. You know, like where he keeps trying out for like the band.
Minus the long wig.
Just in the movie, right where like he makes it. That was Brian's career. Like he tried out and then he stopped. I love you, man.
Well, I'm gonna get to that because that band was literally on the verge of making it. But I want to hear from Jeff first. We'll get back to my journey.
I absolutely want to hear these stories, and the reason why I haven't talked to you more about it is because I want to hear about it on the podcast. I feel like it's good content. But no, yeah. So I want to say middle school or some point like that. Like I started my musical career playing the trombone very poorly, and decided that I didn't really want to do music at all anymore. But
trombone do that to you.
Trombone will do that to you. But I liked the idea of percussion in general, and so got talked into trying percussion. My dad actually played snare and marching band in high school or whatever. So like he kind of pushed me into that. I had the parents who were always wanting to push me into whatever it was, be it sports or band or whatever. They wanted me to do all the things, probably to get me out of their hair if I had to, like in hindsight. But no, I got out of doing trombone stuff. I never had a really ear for anything other than rhythm, and like I can't sing to save my life. Unlike Brian, I can't even pretend to think that I can be a reasonably apt singer. But the percussion stuff always really like that worked out. Like that was a fun thing for me, and I had a good group of people that I hung out with in high school that were on our drum line, and it was a good match. And I, like Brian mentioned, met my wife on drumline. I actually mentioned in I think one of my most recent podcast episodes that the very, very first time that I talked with my wife one-on-one was on introduction to her from a mutual friend on drumline who was going to be in drumline on MSN Messenger. So about as 90s as it gets right there.
Wait, if you're on that same drum line, just like look over like 3 snares to the right. Like that's probably where she's at. Like I don't know why we need to bring computers into this, bro. Like she's like 4 feet from me.
That's actually a good question. I wondered about that. I'm like, why hadn't you already met her? I mean, how big was your high school?
Here's the problem. So like I met her in the sense that we were doing the same thing together. I was an incredibly socially awkward 15, 16-year-old or whatever. I was the person at lunch that was like looking for the group of people at a table that would let me sit there and participate. By participate, I mean exist without talking for the next half hour.
Oh my god!
I was not. Yeah, I was the biggest.
Social nerd ever. And how old were you when you had to join Cobra Kai? To keep forgetting.
This is now 3 straight.
I was going to say 3 in a row.
This is going to be Wills. You just got to mention Cobra Kai. Of all the shows, why Cobra Kai do you keep bringing that up? There are better shows for you to keep referencing.
No, but it's just...
But anyways, the reason why drumline in particular really stuck is we had a very accomplished drummer from some fancy drum thing. I don't even remember what the name of it was, but they competed nationally, and he moved to our school, and he taught us...
Was his name Nick Cannon?
No.
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 Isn't there a movie called Drumline? I'll make sure I'm not going on a limb here.
But,
okay.
So I'll get to that. I'll get to the movie Drumline in a second. So he came to our school, and he knew so much more than any of us knew here out in the middle of central Kansas. But taught us a lot of the things that he had picked up. And so I played snare at the time. I ended up moving to quads at some point. But he taught us how to do stick tricks, and there was actually one of our performances that was like the basketball season, because I played football, so I didn't march or anything. I always was doing football things, but I did drumline during basketball season. it was like the basketball season after Drumline had released, and we had gotten pretty good at Drumline things, and so like it was like the zenith time to be on a Drumline in high school, and there's a video of it somewhere, but we had me and my other quad player guy, we had blindfolded ourselves and we're doing stick tosses, and by some stroke of luck, we were able to pull that entire performance off without making a fool of ourselves. But that was the coolest thing ever. I ended up going back after when I was in my first couple years of college and teaching the drumline, just some of the things that we had learned over the years in high school. My wife is a much more accomplished drummer than I am. She still plays occasionally, but it's since gone by the wayside for myself. I certainly, it was actually funny when we were talking about doing this. I broke out the old snare drum and I wanted to see if I could still do some of the stick tricks that we were doing. And it took a little practice.
Around? You just have a marching snare drum lying around your house, or is it like a
snare pad or an actual drum?
It was for my kit, but I do not have a marching snare just laying around that I can just strap on. But no, as a person with 2 kids, having a drum set out would be an absolute liability for my sleep and well-being and neighborly relationships. But
I sold my kit right before my son was born. So
yeah,
we
honestly probably should have.
Like
I had it in
neighbor
storage.
Can hear you
I had it in
Brian.
storage.
my set has been in storage since, I don't know, probably the last 8-10 years, but it definitely, I mean, it was a very, very cool time. Like, I really, really enjoyed all of that, and I did play with a band for just a tiny bit. Absolutely nothing compared to what it sounds like you guys have done and Brian has done, but it definitely was a big formative experience. And I also think that a lot of why I like to do podcasts is, like, I really enjoyed the performative side of that. Like, I liked showing up and doing a thing and having a thing to show that, like, obviously we do this show and I do my show where it may come off as just a casual conversation, but there's a lot of work and preparation and, paying attention to things that are going on in the world that you can't just show up with no preparation at all and have a good entertaining podcast. In the same way, you can't just show up and
you can.
Will's like, been there, done that.
You know what's funny about that?
Yeah, so that's kind of my background.
Similarly, kind of similar story, but like my uncle is a drummer. I don't know if I think I said that on the podcast. Like, he's a Tampa Bay
Bucks guy.
He's a Tampa Bay Bucks employee, but he also he did drum corps his whole life. So, I mean, he's been a drummer his whole life, and his kid's really good, too. He's playing drums in high school right now. I did drum corps in 97, Spirit of Atlanta, drum and bugle corps. I was 13 at the time. So, like, I felt like I was pretty good, but they didn't. So, like, I was like, you could play cymbals. I was like, meh. So, but he played for Disney, Universal does the guys that drum on garbage cans and, grills and stuff like that. Actually, if you go look at the Animal Kingdom Pandora drum circle, if you look at that video on YouTube, that's him playing in that. And that's, I mean, it's a side gig for him, but got me into drumming. Did that, but I was a rudimentary player, I was high school, we actually, kind of the same thing, I was showing our high school how to play stuff, but I would write our cadences. And we had a really good high school band. Like we won state all the time. Mm-hmm. And but our director, he was a really traditional guy, like high knee, marching, all that kind of stuff. And all my cadences used to be really, really syncopated. And for those of you who don't know what that means, you've got your downbeat stuff, right, that you can kind of feel, like most rap. But syncopated stuff is kind of like how Disturbed plays guitar. It's really like on the offbeat, you know what I mean? You kind of have to feel it. And I felt like you could feel it, but he thought it was a little too syncopated to march to. So he made me change all my best work and write it where it was I felt worse. But that's what I did. And so I kind of translated that to set a little bit. I played in jazz band and things like that. And then when I met Brian, we quickly, as we have talked about, established that he couldn't sing. That wasn't ever going to happen. But I had played guitar in high school. I kind of taught myself a little bit. And I was like, here, just play with my drum set. And I'll be honest, like Brian, like I give Brian a lot of shit or stuff. I give Brian a lot of stuff, but like it was weird the way he played drums, because like his hands were total garbage. Like I'll be honest, like he couldn't play like triplets to save his life. Like really awful.
No,
and they're probably really bad.
I don't know what quads are. I don't know what half of what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, either on drums or on your legs. But his hands were crap. But like his natural feel of like when to hit what was uncannily good. And like that, it was just really strange to me for someone to feel it like that. You know what I mean? Like he would be able to like find rock rhythms that were in like a really interesting way, and he made it work. You know, I mean, like eventually your chops did get a little better. I'll give you that.
And I did get lessons eventually.
He yelled, bro.
So
when we went to record our album in college, he yelled at our recording engineer, our audio engineer, that him playing to a click track wasn't ever going to be a thing, so stop making him like asking him to do it. He's like, I can't play to that, awesome. So you might as well just take it off. Like
which of course isn't true, because I did before my band that was really successful. I took lessons specifically so that I could learn to play to a click and was eventually able to play to a click track. But yes, when it was me and you, I'm like, I don't know what is this thing in my ear? It's throwing me off. So,
not to make Brian feel cooler than he is, because I feel like we're about to get into that. But no, we had somebody who was on our drum line who was mediocre at best. But him and his brother actually ended up moving to Nashville, and he played drums for a small band that actually has ended up being pretty successful. And it's just wild, like just the what?
Hanson?
What'd you say? No,
I thought you said Hanson.
No, he's gone on to be really successful, and but again, it wasn't like he wasn't really good at drumline. He was just good at being a musician.
Two different skills.
Like that just exactly, because it was a very technical thing on drumline. Whereas and obviously, as he went on, he learned more of the technical side and was much more. I mean, he's better than I will ever be in a million years, and continues to be. But like, it's just a clear difference of like hey, I'm good at memorizing a thing and I can do it well and perform, as opposed to like the world is my oyster and I'm going to make this be whatever it is that I'm going to be, and it's going to be awesome and better than any technically.
Yeah, I can't read music. I never learned how to do it. No, you put stuff. I have no idea. I don't know what any of it means. Like I know they taught us in like third grade, but I don't remember those. I know what a note is. I look at a note, but you can't for drums especially. No idea. No clue. And it wasn't until, as I mentioned,
you don't really read music for like to play drum set. You know what I mean? Like you can.
No.
You know, like it's more of a technical thing. But like people don't know, man. You can go look up right now the cover of a Lady Gaga song and watch Brian rock out in a tour bus and with his little mohawk.
I will. I have to say my reaction to realizing that was so like. Here's the background for listeners. Like Brian and I, we've talked about podcast stuff. I like NFL, but we're doing a podcast thing. We started about the same time, so like that's been the majority of our conversations that we've had. And then one day, I happened to find out that this guy is on freaking YouTube with like over 1 million views doing a Lady Gaga cover, and like legitimately. It's freaking good. Like, that is an enjoyable song. Like, what in the world? Like, okay, Brian, Will, you're going to give a little crap, but like, I would ask you to find a better NFL podcaster's cover of any
a Lady Gaga song.
Lady Gaga song.
Challenging.
Yeah. I'm the best Lady Gaga rock cover of any NFL podcaster in history. I will take whatever trophy that I can get. So let me explain my kind of musical journey then. As obviously mentioned that I started playing with Will. That was my introduction to realizing that I could play drums, that I had. It's really the only thing I've been naturally talented in. I have learned to develop sales skills and other things, but the only thing that I had zero training in, and I could just sit. Well, okay, yeah, true. Well, I had some confidence with the ladies. Anyway, but no, drums, I do not know how to describe it better than it just made sense to me. It just made sense. I sat down at that kit. I knew what to do. I didn't know any technicalities. Like I can't read music. I can't do stick tricks. I can't do, like eventually I learned how to do basic paradiddles, but it was like you teach a kid drum lessons for a month, they could probably do just as well as I could. But I understood beats, specifically rock beats. I understood where an upbeat is, when you hit the snare. I eventually learned how to play double bass. So after Will, the evolution of our band was we became a pretty heavy metal band, and I had a 7-piece kit with 2 bass drums and a rack system with like 7 cymbals. I'm a huge Tool fan, so Danny Carey, the drummer of Tool, was my main inspiration there. Yeah, that was really what we bonded on, I think, right away, before anything else was Tool, when we were working at a grocery store together. And then from there, moved to New York, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. Wanted to pursue music. I was selling during the day furniture, high-end furniture, but I still wanted to pursue music as a career. And so when I moved to New York, I was looking for a band to audition. I found this band that was fun, but it wasn't really going anywhere. And so that band didn't last very long. And then I was looking for an additional band, and I found this band called Someday Static. It had been around already for a couple years. Music was lighter than what I was, a little bit pop punky, a little bit, which was what I was interested in, but I did the audition anyway.
You sold your soul for radio.
No, the music changed. The music changed completely. But at the time when I auditioned, they were very pop punk. It was not what I wanted to play, but I don't know. I kind of liked that they seemed to be put together, and they had a lot of stuff. They had a lot of videos up, and so I'm like, okay, I'll go audition for them. It went well. They picked me, and then we ended up, the band evolved. We eventually brought on a different bass player than was there when I joined them. It was just the guitar player and the singer. The singer had an incredible voice. We brought on a keyboard player to bring like an electronic element. And then things, started to work. The bass player we brought on was from Israel. He was had a background in musical engineering, so he could do all of the recording for us, at least for the basic stuff, and then we went into an actual studio later. But we were around for about 2 years. We did multiple East Coast tours. We had an album on iTunes. We released a number of music videos, and our pinnacle, which is what you guys are referencing, is we were picked to open for the Miss New York Chinese Beauty Pageant, which was being held at the Mohegan Sun Arena in Connecticut. So because that was the case, they offered, they're like, hey, we want to do a music video for this. We will pay for the music video. Don't worry about budget. We just want a pop song, and you can make it your own. So we got together. We chose, I don't think I had any insight into this because I wasn't exactly a Lady Gaga fan, but the band chose Paparazzi. They thought we could do a good version of it. We wrote our own rock cover. It was like a $40,000 music video that we didn't have to pay a cent for. There was hair, there was makeup, there was a bunch of Chinese models because it was a Chinese beauty pageant. And it was fantastic, and we released it, and then right after we released that, we played the show, or before we released it, we recorded the video. We played the show for about 3,000 people on the Mohegan Sun Arena stage the night after Kiss played. So I shared the same stage as Kiss one night later. It was incredible. That was my dream, was to play for thousands of people, and here there were thousands of people watching us. It was just a single song, but we got to do a sound check ahead of time and play a song that we were working on this beautiful stage. It was awesome. So right after that, almost the next day, we went on an East Coast tour, got down to the Miami Music Festival, which sounds a lot cooler than it is. Turns out we were playing like in the corner of restaurants. But the point is, the band, the singer and the keyboard player got very discouraged from that. We were meeting with the big-time manager, who ended up being a big dud. We met with the producer, who ended up being a letdown. There was just so many letdowns. And so the band broke up right after that. Literally the Monday after we got back from that tour, we got an email from the lead singer. We've been together 2 years. Got an email from the lead singer saying that her and the keyboard player were starting their own band and the band was breaking up. So then, about, I don't know, a couple weeks later, the music video releases. So the music video, the Someday Static Paparazzi rock cover, released
keyboard player right before that email, by the way.
We won't speculate on that. By the way, their band never got off the ground. They never played a single gig, the two of them. Anyway, the music video released after we had broken up, and it very quickly started gaining views. It now has well over 1.1 million views, over 500 comments, and if you read the comments, which I do to torture myself from time to time, it's all like, these guys are great, where's their album, when are they coming to London, and when are they coming to Chicago and New Zealand and Ireland, and it's just all this, like, literally we missed making it by like a month. That's all to get that, because then people are like, I love this song, where's the rest of it, why can't I find it, are they not, you can do, this is 10 years ago, people are, people, because I was, are you kidding me? It broke my heart. That was my dream. That was the day my dream died. I actually got into real estate right after that. I did join one other band. Me and the bass player, we were the older ones. We kept going, but that band wasn't going anywhere. So I changed my career trajectory. I was selling furniture as a day job with music as my dream. And the day I got that email, I was devastated. So I wasn't about to get in. I didn't even check that video until months later, and then I was like, "Holy crap! This thing is like blowing up." But to this, you can see comments from like 2 weeks ago. This is a 10-year-old video. People still find it on YouTube. They still go on there and comment and say, "Why aren't these guys together? Where's the album? Why can you please come play?" So here's the craziest thing. There is a video of a band in China covering our version of Lady Gaga, Paparazzi. Our version. It's insane. Like, that's all happened afterwards. So I came, and I'm going to double on Jeff said, your desire to perform and how that ties into podcasting. I think that's one of the things that drives me here, is because I loved performing. And seeing that I was this close to actually making it in music, I'm more motivated than ever to make this show a success. Because I know that you can, it's going to sound cheesy, you can have dreams and you can follow your dreams. You put enough work into it, you do enough, put enough blood, sweat, and tears, you can get that. So
the funny thing about this, Jeff, and this isn't the life story of William and Brian, but who I was Billy back then, by the way, which fun fact, before
nice.
I grew facial hair and grew up, but.
Quickly on that, I was debating, like, do I call him Billy on the podcast? When we first started, I'm like, no, I'll do you the decency. You're in your upper 30s. Let's call you Will. So yeah.
So it was one of those things because I like I told you before the show, like I had joined the Navy, so I didn't have very much money when I grew up, and I knew I wanted to go to school. Right, I was going to UF. My great grandma raised me, and I needed money, so I joined this Navy program. And they made you pick a technical degree. So I got a physics degree, right? But then I was obligated to go in the Navy. And, so I didn't think music like that was going to take off for me either. And like I had a unique style, I guess, to my guitar playing, like I was never like a shredder. You know what I mean? But I had a really good, from being a guitarist, like I compared myself often to Dan Donegan from Disturbed. Obviously, he's a very good shredder, and I don't have that kind of shredding talent, but I do have.
But your riffs were catchy. The riffs were
I had
catchy.
very good knack for like making catchy, power chordy, percussive guitar, right? Which was hooky.
Yeah.
So I liked it, and I wanted to keep playing. I mean, we played the same venue. I don't know if you remember, Brian, back then, but Buck Cherry and Seven Mary 3, and that's not like a super big claim to fame, but they played, the same stuff that we did, and
right.
We national touring bands would come there, and then when I had to go in the Navy, I was a little sad because I was like, well, but I'm more like the plan A guy, and like one thing I always kind of like admired about Brian when I saw him move to New York was the fact that like you probably won't make it in music, right? Like that probably won't happen. But like nobody in Brian's life would ever be able to tell him that he didn't try to chase his dream, right? And there's something to that. And like this is probably the fairest I'll ever be towards Brian in my entire life, but
I'll take it. I'm loving it.
I respected that because like I didn't, I took the sure thing, and even now, I have, my career is good. You would never guess, but I'm like a sales engineer, right? And good income, good. My plan A was a solid plan A, right? But I never did really give music its due, and I do my side thing and I have fun with it. On and off, as does our producer Anthony. Fun fact, gotta plug his stuff.
Yes.
But it was never
10 Foot Waves. Check out 10 Foot Waves. That's Anthony's band.
Mm-hmm. It should be called Wiener's Wiener, by the way. But that would have been a much better band name. But anyway,
I tried, Anthony. I tried.
So,
it's subjective.
But it's a thing. I mean, not a lot of people in their life, if you really think about it, chasing your dream is something that, he's popping on. Anthony's popping in. And he popped out. So, it's one of those things that, like, not a lot of people can say that, and to be that close, I've been around a lot of I had friends in college that had music that I collaborated with that made it. I mean, we if you guys ever remember the band Stereoside had some hits. I don't know if you ever remember that band from back in the day.
I remember Stereoside. Sure.
That band actually came from a band in Ocala, Florida. The lead singer, 60 Cycle Hum. And that lead singer was Eddie. He often compared himself to Sully from Godsmack, and he was not that talented, believe you me. But so there are things out there, you've been related to musicians, but I can never say that I truly chased that. I've always kind of taken the safe route, which has been a good route. But you always think to yourself, could I have actually pursued it more, So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I feel like we're pretty similar there. Like I've certainly taken the safe route in lieu of more creative endeavors. But Brian, I'm super curious. So you moved to New York. What was to me, that as a person who's literally lived in the same place my entire life, give or take,
he didn't like being comfortable or driving places, and he didn't like being warm.
I'll tell you the story behind New York. So it was really my wife who drove it. So my wife grew up literally on a farm. Her parents own 100 acres in North Florida, which is essentially like Georgia. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but it's not like what people think of Florida. But she always felt out of place. She always felt like she belonged in New York, in a big city, and she was drawn to New York City before she'd ever visited. She's just over 3 years younger than me. So when she graduated college, so this would have been 2005.
And just over 3 foot tall.
But she's very short. She's like 4'10". But she's as a graduation present, I bought a trip for us to go to New York City. Neither one of us had ever been. This was before we even engaged. We were just dating. And within 5 minutes of getting in that city back in 2005, before we were even engaged to be married, we were like, we have to live here someday. So it just, I don't know how, it just spoke to us. The energy of the city at that time, it just spoke to us. And so when we did get married, which was a full, year and a half later, 6 months after we got married, we moved to New York. So we moved there in 2007, strictly because we wanted to live there. There was a bonus. The music scene in New York City is great. So I saw I can make that happen. Here's what I'll say about plan A versus plan B. First of all, I'm just a natural dreamer. I can't help myself. Clearly, I turned 40 and I'm like, let me change direction and start a podcast, see if I can make this work.
Yeah.
I just believe things are going to work.
And then he reaches out and goes, I want to do a podcast about football and politics, bro. And I'm like, okay, as somebody who thinks things through before he does them, I'm like, you have picked.
You were very hesitant. That's why you were a guest to start.
You're still on this podcast, Will.
You picked two audiences that couldn't hate each other more. You know what I mean? What are you doing?
Yeah.
That will never work. And he's like, that's why. That's why it's genius. And I'm like, no. It's maybe. And who knows? And
I'm able to pivot. There's a reason we dropped the politics fully, is because I did get some hate messages that said boycott the NFL. I'm like, okay, let me stay away
those are probably
those
bots,
people.
by the way.
Maybe. But my point on the point A versus point B. Yes, I'm a natural dreamer. I'm gonna go for my dreams. That's just how I'm built. But my plan B actually turned out pretty well too. I have a very, very nice job and I make a very comfortable living, especially out here in the Bay Area, where I had the exact same job in New York and I'm getting paid a lot more to do the same thing. So plan Bs can work out too. So maybe it's a little bit of luck, and I'm sure there's some luck involved, but that was just how I viewed it. I'm only living once. I only get one shot at this. I'd rather at the end say, you know what, I gave it my all, I tried and I failed, as opposed to let me be safe.
So the Rockstar movie reference, I think in my life, if you fast forward through the middle part of that movie where he's successful and can do a lot of drugs and women, and you leave that out, because obviously that's never going to happen for me. At the end of the movie, where he's playing in a coffee shop, in a cover band, that could be me, I could have that part of the movie, play. Yeah, but that's the thing about playing out, dude. Playing out is fun. If you're not a musician and you listen to this, which. Yeah, thank you for the last 30 minutes, because I guess you've been kind of boring.
Thanks for putting up with us.
Sorry.
But it's fun, man. Especially when you play clubs and stuff. You get these drunk people that come to you and you're like, you're amazing. Like, you're basically like Eddie Van Halen. You're like, no, not at all. Like, I'm
Not
hot
even a little bit,
garbage.
but thank you.
But,
I got asked to sign like a 7-year-old's drumsticks once, and that was literally like, there will never be another high that I will ever have that is as good as
right?
having
You're like,
some
I'm
little
so
kid
important.
think that you're the coolest thing ever. Like, you have no idea how much I'm degrading the value of these drumsticks by putting my dumb signature on them.
So I have 4 things that I'm going to mention on that front. One, back in
Four?
the Gainesville, Florida days, is I was recognized on the streets once from a random person who
wow.
happened to see a show. I was like, "What?" They're like, "Aren't you in Someday Static?" I'm like, "Why? Yes, I am." I guess that was New York. No, so that was later. The Gainesville thing was we played a show on Halloween where we actually paid for pizza and beer, so we packed the place because it was free pizza and beer for everybody. But they made us. We actually played a cover of "Killing in the Name of" by Rage Against the Machine, and it slayed so much that they wanted an encore. So this was the only time we ever had an encore. So we played "Killing in the Name of" again, and it just went nuts. Like, there was a huge mosh pit, and everybody like, "F you, I won't do what they tell me." It was crazy. And then the last thing is when Someday Static, right at the pinnacle, when we first of all we got our own tour bus, so we got to ride a bus. It was just from New York to Connecticut, but just having a bus was awesome. And then having our dressing room. So when we played Mohegan Sun Arena, they're like, "Here's your dressing room." It had Someday Static on the door, just like you see in those movies.
Oh man,
It was so cool.
that is so cool. That's so cool.
So fun fact.
And life will never get better.
Since we're telling stories, so I answered an ad in the college paper about this is just music randomly about tutoring. So it was these rich white people, and they wanted their rebellious kid to learn an instrument. So they're like paying people to come teach them how to like read music. So I like show up, and I'm like, I mean, he wanted to learn how to play guitar. So I was like, I had an in brief with his family, and I was like, what are your goals for your son in his musical career? And they're like, well, we'd like him to really learn how to read music and, to really learn the instrument of guitar and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I helped teach guitar in high school. I knew music theory, right? So I'm like, okay. So I go in this kid's room, and this dude had like it was like a Stepford wife mom, and like this kid was like something straight out of like a Manson like house, dude. He had like nose rings, like one of these little deals, like, you know what I mean? Like, he was a rebel. And I was like, so like, I want some guitar. I was like, your mom wants me to teach you scales and stuff. He's like, yeah, I don't want to learn any of that shit. And I'm like, okay. I was like, well, what do you want to learn? He's like, how to play songs. And I'm like, okay. So I started showing him like some I think I started him out with King Nothing or something, just some Metallica riffs. And I started teaching this kid how to play guitar, and like, so they would pay me $20 like for an hour to come over and like basically just jam out with this kid because that's all he wanted to do. And like, they'd ask me like, is he learning scales? And I'm like one day I came and I was like, bro, I got to show you one scale, or like your mom's going to be really upset with me and like fire me. So like, can you please just learn this scale real quick, and we'll go back to like our kill switch engage riffs. And he's like, yeah. So anyway, this is getting to be a pretty crazy story, and I probably can't tell this whole thing. But his stepdad, I found out he started asking me what I did. I was like, well, I'm in, Navy, this and blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know if he associated Navy with like military and like security, but this guy was a former cop who had his own business being like a private eye. Right. And so insurance companies would hire him to spy for them on people that were making insurance claims that they think they were just going on too long. So like, if you got hurt on the job and you were like milking the benefits, like the insurance company will hire a private eye to spy on you. I don't know if people realize that. So that's what this guy's business was. And he needed an assistant. So he's like, well, this guy's in the military. He's obviously good at that, right? Like, I was a college kid, bro. Like, I had no skill. I had never done anything for the Navy. I had a goatee, and like, I was arguably too fat. So, but like, so he gives me like a tripod. He gives me like a tripod and a like a manila folder with like my target in it. Like, this is the most like secret agent stuff ever, right? And he's like, go spy on this guy. Like, no training, bro, like nothing, and he hired me to like do this.
Oh my gosh.
And so like, And so the lessons with the kid had fizzled off, by the way. Like, we kind of stopped doing that. He lost interest. He was going to go do something else. So this guy hired me to like do this private eye thing, and he made me like this little ID card. Like, you can do that. Like, so I worked under his license, and it was like a thing you printed off on your printer, bro. It was like, he like took a picture of me and like printed it on this little card, and it was like private investigator intern for, I forget what the name of his company was. And so like his marching orders to me were like, go spy on this guy. And so like, I'm like, I don't know what that means, right? They're like, he's a construction worker, you know, he probably leaves his house like super early. And I was a college kid, and I'm like, well, that's not cool. Like, can I get him on the way home, you know? Like, so like, I'm just like sitting outside of this random dude's house, like waiting him for like to just do stuff that I'm like filming him, like waiting for him to do stuff that's like he shouldn't be able to do, you know? And like the dude never comes out, and like I got really bored. Like I was not a good hire. Finally, one day, this guy comes out in this Impala, and I this is a really good story. I'm trying to do it justice without making it too long. But long story short, in Gainesville, there's a lot of hills. And there was this guy, and like his wife and his kids were in the car, and he was in an Impala SS, and I was in a little Honda S2000. You know, the little like convertible thing. They don't make them anymore, but I had one, and I was following this guy. It is insanely hard to follow somebody where they like don't know that you're following them. Like, I know that sounds easy, but like on a back road where there's like not a lot of cars, you got to kind of like really hang back, and if they take some turns, they can lose you, right? And like, this is the first time I'd ever seen this guy drive, so I was like, this dude can't lose me. So he goes over a hill, and I go over this hill with him. I come like behind him, right? As I'm going over the hill, it's a pretty big hill. He's coming back the other way, you know? And I'm like, that's weird. He did a U-turn. And like my brain, like I don't pick up on things that fast. And I'm like, he must have been going the wrong way, right? So I stop and turn around and like, you know, do a little like, you know, 3-point turn and turn around. And I'm on the phone with this guy, my boss. As I come back over the hill, the dude's coming back over the hill in my direction. And I'm like, now I know something's weird, right? Because the guy turned around twice. And so I'm on the phone with my boss, and like, again, no training, bro. And I'm like, this guy just turned around twice. And my boss like he goes, oh shit, or he goes, oh crap.
Abort.
He goes, he made you get out of there. Those were his words exactly. Bro, I was like 18.
That sounds like a movie.
Shit my pants. Like, I was so scared. I was like, oh no. Because this dude was a big construction worker. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just a little kid. And I'm thinking I'm dead. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's going to kill me. It gets even better. So his words to me verbatim were, he made you get out of there. So I like hit it in my little S2000, and I'm like, this car will obviously fly. I got news for you. They don't fly that fast. So he like Dukes of Hazzard fishtails in the street to whip his car around. And I legitimately was scared. Like, I have never been more scared in my entire life. So I'm like flying in my car. This dude's hauling ass in his Impala SS behind me, making up ground pretty quick. Like, my little rice rocket was not rocketing. Like, it was it was not rocketing, dude. The boosters did not engage, put it that way. Like for all that VTEC noise, it actually didn't go that fast. And so like, he's like on me and like just kind of swerving around, being like crazy, right? And we're going through this little town. I forget, it was Little Waldo or some one of those little towns around Gainesville. The speed limit, I didn't notice this. I had it floored, so I think the limiter was like at 107 or something like that. I was going that fast. Like, literally the car would not go faster. Like, I had like the gas pedal to the ground, just didn't want to die. The speed limit was like gradually going down because I was getting into a town, right? So it was like 65, 55, 45, 35, right? 35. I'm going 107. Like, and the dude like had realized this, and he kind of backed off, and I didn't notice it. So I go in through the 35 going 107. This cop car, he probably crapped himself when he saw me go by. He like flicks the lights on. 4 cop cars pull me over, right? This dude comes up to my window, and I don't know what he's expecting, but it was not what he got. Because like, he comes up to my window and like smacks my window really hard with like his flashlight. and like it's really tinted, it's dark windows, and he rolls it down, and like he looks at me, and I'm almost crying, and I'm like, thank God you're here. He's like, what? And like he's like, what do you need? And I'm like, that guy was gonna kill me. And he's like, what is going on? You know what I mean? And there was like, and so like I was like, and then I just like laid it on him like in a way that he was not ready for it. I'm like, I'm a private investigator intern, and I was following a guy, and he chased me, and blah blah blah. Like I thought I was gonna die. Thank God for you, And I hand him like my little Walmart ID card that was like on a printer, and like they had a huddle, bro. It was like being in the Super Bowl and like having a play be reviewed. Like they had to huddle about.
Way to bring the NFL back. I love it.
They had to like figure out what to do, right? Because I was overjoyed that I was about to get arrested. Like I was never like, you know
Protection.
what I mean? And so they came back, and he's like,
by the way, I've also been arrested. I've been to jail. That's for another podcast. Go on.
Yeah. So he comes back, and he's like, listen, man. He's like, I can't just let you go. like you probably could have killed somebody. He's like, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do though. He's like, I'm gonna write you for 12 over. So it was like 35. Wow. He gave me a ticket for like.
So he took 70 off.
35.
60 off.
And he's like, I don't know what you're doing with this line of work, but I don't think it's for you. And
maybe do it a little slower next time.
Yeah, dude. And
that was, I'm gonna guess, the last time you did any private investigating intern work.
so like I did it for like a few more weeks, and I never did get that guy one usable.
Even after your near-death experience.
I never gave him one usable piece of footage for all the money he paid me. Not one thing.
So you were just off. You were awful.
I got fired, and I was never more relieved. He called me. It was the day before we
fired. Were you even getting paid for it? You were an intern.
Yeah, I was getting paid for it by the hour.
Were you? Okay.
He called me up. It was the night before the student ticket lottery. So in Florida, you had to call into a lottery to get student tickets. This is back when we were good. Like I graduated the year before we won the national championship against Ohio State. And I got up really early to call into this phone system, and I was like asleep. And he wanted me to be at this dude's house at like 4:30 to film him. And he called me at like 6. And I was passed out because it was 6 in the morning, and I'm a college kid. He's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm asleep." And he's like, "This ain't working out." And I was like, "Thank God, I will bring you your camera." Like I couldn't quit. I had never quit a job my entire life, I was like, "I'll bring you your camera today after I wake up."
And my paper laminated ID card.
Yeah. I hope you kept the ID card.
Yeah, I kept that. I kept that ID card.
For posterity. Put that next to your Antonio Brown jersey.
And then, I guess to bring the story completely full circle really quickly, that kid found me like 4 years or way, way later. I was like visiting the university. I had already graduated. And he was in like a band playing in Gainesville. And he's like, "Hey, bro." And he had like tattoos on his face. I had no idea who it was. And I'm like, "What's up, random dude?" And he's like, "You don't remember me?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "You taught me how to play guitar with my crazy stepdad." And I was like, "Oh. What's up, buddy?" And he's like, "Yeah."
By the way, now I'm just now realizing that's how this story ties in. I'm just like listening.
He goes, "Yeah, they're not together anymore." He was pretty crazy, and I'm like, "Yeah, it didn't work so well with me working for him." And so that's how the story comes full circle. And he drunk called me like 5 years later, and he was like, "Hey, he was really drunk. I guess he had an alcohol problem." Yeah, I guess, which is how he fired me in the first place. But he called me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I just want you to know, like, we were really good friends. And if you ever need to, if you ever want to get back into the work, just let me know." And I'm like, "Who are you, bro? Like, you don't remember? Like, you fired me. It was awful. Like, why would you call me?" And
if anybody in the Orlando, Florida area is in need of an investigative intern,
I'm your guy.
Reach out to Will Southern. All right, we're going to wrap it up right there. That's a good story, and I'm glad that it did come back and tie into music because I was like, it's an interesting story, but I have no idea where you're going with this. So, Jeff Chesser, thank you so much for being on. Please make sure to check out his podcast, The Year We Started a Podcast. Will, enjoy your murder-looking hotel room. I hope you brought your laminate ID from your PI days.
I brought my life-size cutout of Tom Brady to sleep with.
Of course, you go
Same
cuddle
difference.
with Tom. You go cuddle with Tom. For those who are listening, thank you so much. If you're watching us on YouTube, as I mentioned, please subscribe. We're building that up. If you're listening on a podcast, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Check us out on Patreon and our Discord community. I'll put links to both of those in the episode description. I will also put some information for my band, Someday Static, my former band that we were talking about. So if anybody wants to look it up, it's all over the internet. My
I think
entire
we should
life
invite
as
our listeners too. If they have any music that they're proud of, post your stuff. We want to hear it.
There you go. Send it to us. You can tweet at us, official PP Pod. You can also, as I mentioned, join Discord. We've had a lot of people on there. We're getting some great conversation on there. But you can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Just like Jeff says on his podcast, everywhere but Snapchat, because I'm with you there. Don't think I'm going to try to do the Snapchat thing. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on the PPP.